Imagine a color so rare, so precious, that it costs more than gold. A single gram of dye required crushing 12,000 sea snails. This wasn't just a color. It was power itself, woven into fabric, dripping with the blood of empires. And Russia's story with purple is unlike any other nation on earth. What if I told you that? The fate of an entire civilization hinged on the secrecy of a purple dye. That emperors were literally born in purple rooms to legitimize their divine right to rule. Welcome to a journey through Russia's most fascinating obsession. Let's start with something most people don't know. The ancient world had one color that separated gods from mortals, emperors from subjects: Tyrian purple. To produce just 1 ounce of this dye, artisans needed to harvest and process over 250,000 murex sea snails. Think about that for a second. 250,000 creatures for a single ounce. The Phoenicians discovered this process around 1500 BC in the city of Tyre, modern-day Lebanon. The dye came from a mucus secretion of the murex snail. The process was so labor-intensive and the smell so putrid that dye works were built far from city centers. By the time of the Roman Empire, wearing purple became a death sentence for commoners. Emperor Nero issued a decree. Only the emperor himself could wear true Tyrian purple. Anyone caught wearing even imitation shades faced execution. This wasn't fashion, this was survival. Purple meant you claimed divinity. The Romans took this obsession and amplified it to unprecedented levels. When an heir was born to the imperial family, they entered the world in a special purple-draped chamber. These children were called porphyrogenitus, literally meaning born in the purple. This wasn't ceremonial, it was constitutional. Now here's where Russia enters the story in the most dramatic way possible. When Constantinople fell to the Ottoman Turks in 1453, the Byzantine Empire collapsed. The great dye works were destroyed. The secrets scattered. But one nation claimed to be the heir to Byzantine glory: Russia. Ivan III married Sophia Poliologina, niece of the last Byzantine emperor. This wasn't just a marriage. It was a transfer of divine authority. Moscow declared itself the Third Rome. The First Rome fell to barbarians. The Second Rome, Constantinople, fell to the Ottomans. The Third Rome, Moscow, would stand forever. The Russians adopted the Byzantine double-headed eagle as their coat of arms. They embraced Orthodox Christianity with fervor, and they inherited the symbolic power of imperial purple. But here's the twist that makes Russia's purple story unique. They didn't have access to the Mediterranean Sea. No murex snails. No Tyrian purple. So what did they do? They turned to their own land's treasures, the Ural Mountains. Russia discovered some of the world's finest amethyst deposits in the 1700s. These weren't ordinary amethysts, they were deep, royal purple crystals that rivaled any dye in intensity and beauty. Catherine the Great understood the power of purple better than almost any ruler in history. When she commissioned her imperial crown in 1762, the jeweler, Jeremy Pawsey, created something extraordinary. Nearly 5,000 diamonds, 75 massive pearls, and crowning it all, a stunning red spinel, but surrounded by purple amethysts. The crown weighed almost 4 pounds. Wearing it was physically painful. But Catherine wore it for hours during her coronation. Why? Because suffering for purple proved her divine right to rule. She was connecting herself to every emperor since Rome, through color alone. Let me share something fascinating about amethyst in Russian folklore. The name amethyst comes from Greek, meaning not intoxicated. Ancient Greeks believed the stone prevented drunkenness. They carved wine goblets from amethyst, hoping to stay sober during banquets. The Russians embraced this mythology enthusiastically. In Russian Orthodox tradition, bishops wore amethyst rings as symbols of piety and sobriety. The purple stone represented spiritual wisdom and connection to the divine. When you see paintings of Russian Orthodox clergy, notice the purple in their vestments. It's not random, it's a direct line to Byzantine imperial tradition. But Russia's purple connection goes deeper than crowns and churches. In ancient Russian cities like Moscow, Tver, and Veliki Novgorod, archaeologists have found processed amethyst jewelry dating back centuries. These weren't imported. These were locally crafted pieces, showing that purple gemstones were valued throughout Russian society. The Ural Mountain amethyst mines became legendary. By the 1800s, Russian amethysts were considered the finest in the world. Deep purple, with flashes of red, crystal clear. European royalty specifically requested Russian stones. The country that couldn't access sea snails had found something better. Now, let's talk about something that might blow your mind. The entire concept of royal purple was based on scarcity. Once the synthetic dye was invented in the 1850s, purple became accessible to everyone. The color lost its imperial mystique in most of Europe. Scarlet, made from cochineal insects, became the new royal color. But not in Russia. The Orthodox Church maintained purple as a sacred color. The imperial family continued using purple in state ceremonies. Why? Because their purple wasn't just dye. It was stone. It was earth. It was permanent in a way that fabric could never be. Here's a statistic that puts this in perspective. A Byzantine emperor's purple robe required dye from approximately 60,000 murex snails. At the height of production, the entire Mediterranean region produced less than 1,000 pounds of Tyrian purple annually. That's for the entire region. Meanwhile, a single Russian amethyst crystal could weigh several pounds and last forever. The shift from dye to gemstone wasn't just practical, it was philosophical. Russia transformed the meaning of imperial purple from something consumed to something eternal. Let me tell you about a specific historical moment that captures this perfectly. In 1913, the Romanov dynasty celebrated 300 years of rule. Nicholas II commissioned a massive celebration. Nobles were required to dress in 17th-century style costumes. And what color dominated? Purple and gold. Hundreds of attendees wore purple velvet, purple silk, adorned with amethysts and purple gemstones. The photographs from that ball show a sea of purple. It was the last great celebration before the revolution. Purple marked both the height and the end of Imperial Russia. Now, let's address something controversial. After the Russian Revolution in 1917, the Bolsheviks rejected everything imperial. Purple disappeared from official use. The crown jewels were sold or hidden. Amethysts were treated as bourgeois symbols. For 70 years, purple was politically dangerous in Russia. But here's what's interesting. The Orthodox Church, though persecuted, never abandoned purple. In secret churches and hidden monasteries, priests continued wearing purple vestments. The color became resistance. It became memory. It became hope for a different Russia. Fast forward to 1991. The Soviet Union collapses. Russia emerges seeking its identity. And what happened to purple? It returned, not in the same imperial way, but transformed. Museums began displaying the crown jewels. Churches openly used purple vestments. The Ural amethyst mines reopened for gemstone tourism. Today, you can visit these mines, you can hold stones that might have adorned a Serena's necklace. The purple that once meant divine authority now means cultural heritage. It's a remarkable transformation. The color survived revolution, survived communism, survived everything. Let me share some modern statistics that show purple's lasting impact. The Moscow Kremlin Armory Museum, which houses the imperial regalia, receives over 2.5 million visitors annually. What's the most photographed item? The imperial crown with its purple-hued stones. Even in our digital age, people are drawn to this ancient symbol. The Russian Orthodox Church now has over 150 million members worldwide. Purple remains central to their liturgical colors, especially during Lent. That's 150 million people maintaining a tradition that stretches back to Byzantium. But here's something most people miss. Russia's purple story isn't just about the past. It's about identity. In a nation that's been conquered, revolutionized, transformed repeatedly, purple is a thread connecting ancient Rus to modern Russia. It transcends politics. Think about what that means. A color survived a millennium of change. It survived the Mongol invasion. It survived the time of troubles. It survived Napoleon. It survived Lenin and Stalin. A color proved more durable than empires. And there's a lesson here that extends beyond Russia. Throughout history, humans have assigned meaning to colors. But that meaning isn't fixed. It evolves. Purple went from representing imperial divinity to representing cultural memory. The same color, completely different significance. What other aspects of culture work this way? Language, music, architecture, they all carry forward meanings we may not even consciously recognize. When a Russian sees purple in a church, they're seeing Byzantium, they're seeing Catherine the Great, they're seeing survival. Let me give you a concrete example. In 2014, during the Sochi Winter Olympics, Russia's opening ceremony featured extensive purple lighting and costumes. This wasn't random. It was a deliberate invocation of imperial heritage presented to a global audience. Purple was saying, "We remember who we were." Critics called it nationalistic. Supporters called it cultural pride. But everyone recognized the symbolism. That's the power of a color that's been coded with meaning for over 1,500 years. You can't see purple in a Russian context without feeling the weight of history. Now, here's where the story gets really interesting for modern times. Russia has been trying to recreate the historic Tyrian purple using ancient methods. Marine biologists and historians have partnered to harvest murex snails sustainably and produce small batches of authentic dye. Why would anyone do this in an age of synthetic dyes? Because authenticity matters. Because understanding the past requires experiencing it. A textile dyed with real Tyrian purple connects the present to the ancient world in a way no synthetic can match. These experimental batches of purple dye cost approximately $40,000 per kilogram. That's roughly $18,000 per pound. It's almost as expensive as it was 2,000 years ago. Yet museums and researchers pay this price because the color carries knowledge. When you analyze ancient purple fabric, you're not just seeing color. You're seeing trade routes, seeing economic systems, seeing the labor of thousands of people. Each thread tells a story about who had power and how they maintained it. Russia's relationship with purple also teaches us about nationalism and memory. After the Soviet period, Russia faced an identity crisis. Were they European, Asian, Soviet? Something new. The return to imperial symbols, including purple, was one answer. But it's complicated. Not all Russians embrace this imperial nostalgia. Many see it as glorifying an oppressive past. The purple that represents cultural continuity to some represents aristocratic tyranny to others. Color becomes political. Here's a fascinating detail. The purple room where Byzantine emperors were born. Russia never built one. They inherited the concept, the ideology, the symbolism, but they adapted it. Russian czars weren't born in purple rooms. They were crowned with purple stones instead. This adaptation is crucial to understanding Russian culture. They didn't slavishly copy Byzantium, they took the essence and made it Russian. Purple in fabric became purple in stone. Mediterranean became Siberian. Imported became indigenous. Let me tell you about one specific amethyst that captures this perfectly. The largest gem-quality amethyst ever found in Russia weighed over 100 pounds. It was discovered in the 19th century in the Urals. They called it the Empress. This single stone could have supplied purple color for an entire Byzantine palace. Instead, it sat in Russian earth for millions of years, waiting to be discovered. That's a metaphor for Russia itself. Ancient power, waiting beneath the surface. Today, Russian amethysts remain highly valued in the global gemstone market. Collectors specifically seek Siberian amethyst, which has a distinctive deep purple color with red flashes. A single high-quality stone can sell for thousands of dollars per carat. But beyond market value, these stones carry cultural weight. When a Russian person wears amethyst jewelry, they're wearing a piece of their nation's identity. They're connecting to earth, to history, to empire, to church, all through a purple stone. So what does Russia's purple story teach us? First, that symbols can outlast the systems that created them. Purple survived the fall of Rome, Byzantium, and the Russian Empire. The color transcended politics. Second, that adaptation is survival. Russia couldn't get sea snails, so they used amethysts. They couldn't maintain Byzantine traditions exactly, so they transformed them. Flexibility preserved tradition. Third, that meaning is layered. Purple wasn't just one thing. It was imperial power, religious authority, cultural memory, natural beauty, all simultaneously. The richness of meaning made it resilient. And fourth, that people need connections to the past. In uncertain times, symbols like purple provide continuity. They remind us that we're part of something larger than our individual lives. Before we finish, I want to address one more aspect, the future of purple in Russia. As the country continues evolving, will purple remain significant? Early signs suggest yes. Fashion designers are incorporating traditional purple motifs into modern designs. Orthodox Christianity is experiencing a revival, bringing purple vestments back into public view. Museums are investing heavily in preserving and displaying purple-related artifacts. The next generation is being taught that purple means something specific about being Russian. But there's also pushback. Younger, globally minded Russians sometimes see imperial symbols as outdated. They want a Russia defined by innovation, not nostalgia. To them, purple might represent the past they're trying to move beyond. This tension between tradition and modernity isn't unique to Russia. Every culture faces it. But Russia's purple gives us a vivid example of how one symbol can mean radically different things to different generations within the same society. Here's my final thought. The story of Russia and purple is really a story about how humans create meaning. We took secretions from sea snails and decided they represented divinity. We found purple stones in mountains and decided they connected us to emperors we never met. This meaning-making is what separates us from other species. We don't just survive, we create narratives, symbols, connections, across time. Purple in Russia is a perfect example of this uniquely human activity. So the next time you see purple, think about its journey. From Mediterranean snails to Byzantine emperors to Russian amethysts to modern fashion. Every shade carries centuries of human desire for beauty, power, and meaning. Russia's secret palette wasn't really secret. It was hidden in plain sight, in stones beneath the earth, in vestments, in churches, in crowns, in museums, waiting for us to notice, waiting for us to understand what it means. Now I want to hear from you. What symbols does your culture use to connect past and present? What colors carry special meaning where you're from? Does your country have something like Russia's purple? A symbol that survived centuries of change? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And tell us, what country or city are you watching from? I'm always fascinated to learn where our global audience is located and what cultural symbols matter to you. If this deep dive into Russia's purple fascination intrigued you, share this video with someone who loves history, gemstones, or just incredible stories about how colors shaped civilizations. See you in the next video. Bye.